Mr. President, I rise in full support of the Special Prosecutor Bill. Before I make my brief contribution towards the debate, please allow me leave to congratulate our team of athletes who participated in the Commonwealth Games, especially Miss Juliana Alfred, who attained a silver medal at the Games. I also wish to express my condolences to the family of the former Speaker of the House, Mr. Donald Alsey. Mr. President, over the past week, I lost two of my constituents in tragic circumstances, and I wish to express condolences to the family of Kaim Jean from Jetwin, who succumbed to his injuries from a vehicular accident. He was a young man from the community, and I know there's a lot of grief among the young people of Jetwin. I was told that they've been crying from the day that he passed away. I also wish to extend condolences to his dad, Dennis, his mom, Adri, and all those who were around him. He was a well-behaved, a young man who was raised well and an example to the other young people in the community. He always engaged me in conversation, and I know that I will miss him dearly. I also wish to extend solace to the family of Mrs. Diana Theodore, who was found dead at her home over the weekend. This is the third woman from my constituency who has met their demise through violent circumstances within the last year and a half. I am happy today that at least there has been a break in the case of one of these women. But as I have said before, this leaves us with two grieving families. Today, the women on this side of the House stand in solidarity to denounce the act of violence against women. Our mothers, our sisters, our young women, our nurturers. And we are asking for an end to the violence that have perpetuated our family and our communities. Mr. President, this morning I have listened to the speakers before me. And let me remind everyone that the purpose of this bill is to provide for the special prosecutor. And the functions of this special prosecutor are to receive a complaint of corrupt conduct from any person and investigate the corrupt conduct. This morning I listened to Senator Polius, and she wants the special prosecutor to get information from the sources. I have no doubt that the special prosecutor will be well vetted. He will be a professional, he or she will be a professional and will conduct his or her duties with due diligence, without interference, to investigate corrupt conduct on his or her own motion, to institute a criminal prosecution or civil case in any court against a public officer or a public official if the conduct of the public officer or public official appears to the special prosecutor on reasonable grounds to involve corrupt conduct, and to prosecute a criminal offense or a civil claim instituted by him or her in a court. So we don't leave anything to chance. We ensured, Mr. President, that this special prosecutor bill was well thought of and carefully circulated to ensure public scrutiny. And I am hopeful that it will rekindle the value of honesty and transparency in our society. Mr. President, for too long, there seemed to be silent acceptance of corruption as long as some persons are beneficiaries to the corruption. Mr. President, this morning I got a message from a St. Lucian who is very happy that this bill has come into being. And let me take the privilege to read his message. And I quote, "I have to commend your Prime Minister and his team for one of the most important pieces of legislation to come out of any administration for decades. Great job." Mr. President, this is a resident who was raised well and who has the values that our parents gave us when we were growing up. These are residents who have not lost faith in public officials, and they know the difference between an administration that is ready to work with the people, an administration that is in the interest of the people, and an administration that is not. And I am sure that there are thousands of St. Lucians who share the same sentiment as this individual who sent me this message this morning. Mr. President, public officials are elected, selected, or employed to serve the people of the country, not to serve themselves. And very often we find some public officials who are there to help themselves. And it doesn't surprise me that some of our young people now believe that to get money you have to be a politician, and as soon as you become a candidate, you become a millionaire overnight, and you should have money to dish out to anybody who has. The reality is this should not be, because we are public officials and we should not take advantage of the resources of the nation. We should not behave as if the resources belong to us and we can do as we wish with them. Mr. President, the opposition, I believe, had no choice in supporting this bill, because anyone who opposes this bill condones corruption. And I am sure that the opposition would not want to be seen in a bad light. As public officials, Mr. President, we are expected to execute our duties with integrity. Mr. President, I remember when I was a school principal, I was never the sole signatory to the school's account, because my name is my most treasured possession. And this is what my grandmother preached. She always tells you, "Moun dou passe l'argent," that your name, your reputation is more important than money. And I value what my grandmother has instilled in me to this day. I know that every responsible citizen should relish a good name. And we on this side have zero tolerance to corruption and malpractice. Mr. President, during the reign of the former administration, I heard people brag about getting paid when they had not worked, and they were happy. Mr. President, this government has taken the lead to ensure that a special prosecutor is appointed, and we are prepared to pay the consequences if we are found wanting. And I don't believe that anybody should be annoyed and talk about public servants, that we are targeting public servants. I think all of us should preach integrity. All of us should preach transparency. Every one of us should preach a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. And our children should believe that they should get a good education, they should empower themselves, they should use their skills to earn a fair living, and not a mentality of getting rich fast. Because if this is the mentality we give to our children, they will find all sorts of illegal means of accumulating wealth. And I don't think that this is the society that we want to live in. And if this is what we want to live in, we have to face the consequences. Mr. President, we are aware that corruption increases inequality. So we have a few rich, and the majority, the masses, suffer. It results in hardship for the majority of the population. Mr. President, corruption decreases accountability. People engage in corruption, people are not called to account, and people feel that it's okay to carry out corrupt activities. So we have unemployment on one side, people are frustrated, you have violent crimes, etc. When we engage in corruption and we have inequality and frustration in our society. Mr. President, we are called to service. And this is what public officials are called to do, to give service. This government that I am a part of is intolerant to corruption. And as you have heard before, and this is the truth and the whole truth, that our Prime Minister, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, has made it abundantly clear that if you are corrupt, you cannot be a part of his team, and he gives you a free hand to walk out. This is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We are here, this government is here to grow our economy. We are here to serve the people of St. Lucia. We are here to put the people of St. Lucia first. And any behavior that is detrimental to the survival and growth and well-being of our people and of St. Lucia is condemned by this government that I serve. And therefore, I can hear the heckling on the other side. But they had a chance. They had a chance. And therefore, Mr. President, I stand in support of a bill that safeguards our economy, that safeguards the interest of St. Lucians. And I am not afraid. If I am corrupt, that you pick me up. And every public servant should know that they have to serve with integrity. And if you know you are corrupt, you have to know that you have to face the consequences. So I am wondering why people are coming here to say that, you know, we might be targeting public servants, we might be targeting who and whatever. We're not targeting anybody. We are trying to create a society where there is integrity. And this is what we are working at. And it's long overdue, but this government is here for the rescue. And those people, I know normally when people shout, well, come for me, sometimes they are the most guilty parties, and they are saying that so that you leave them alone. But as I said before, the special prosecutor will be well vetted, and the special prosecutor will do what he has to do. And so I have no fears. Mr. President, I stand here, I am proud to be part of a government determined to stamp out corruption. And as one speaker said before, the cancer that has been allowed to permeate our society. I don't think we can be tolerant of this kind of behavior anymore. And as a people, all of us should stand united. And I'm very happy that the opposition is supporting this bill, because every one of us has to stand united to ensure that St. Lucia becomes a place that other countries would want to do business with, that young people will grow and to be proud to be St. Lucians, that the people in higher authority would be examples to our students, to our young people, so that they don't believe that in order to live a decent life, they have to be corrupt. And so I am very happy, I'm very elated that today we are standing here in this house in support of a bill that is to the benefit of all of us, to the benefit of St. Lucia. And therefore, I am in full support of the bill. Thank you very much.
Senator Java here.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity to share my voice on a bill that has been very much anticipated in this upper house. And I did make note that members opposite spoke of this being a campaign promise. And there has never been a time that this is denied, or we, the St. Lucia Labour Party members or parliamentarians, have had to deny that this was a campaign promise. No one is hiding from the fact that there has been pressure from the ground, from the people of St. Lucia, to be different. Nobody is hiding from the fact that there has been a call for change. And so our political leader at the time, our political leader, now Prime Minister, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, spoke of a special prosecutor whose role was to investigate and prosecute corrupt practices of public officials and public officers. So it is true, because the people want an end to corruption. But Mr. President, we should all want an end to corruption. And that is why the Prime Minister is delivering on his promise. Now, members opposite have been making certain allegations and saying that it is out in the public sphere. But I have never heard one member of cabinet or one member of parliament from the St. Lucia Labour Party government admit to corruption or corrupt practices. But I cannot say the same for the United Workers' Party, Mr. President, because it was their own former cabinet member who spoke of if he had to get involved in crime. Simwen Pufekwim, Naifekwim, Mwemem. If he had to do it, he would do it by himself. And did they forget the words of a former Attorney General who said that politics was not for good boys? Politics don't have room for good boys. If you're a good boy, you're not supposed to be in politics. We cannot say the same for members on the St. Lucia Labour Party side. And if a special prosecutor or even an attorney general on this side of the house would have any such words to utter, I bet you Honorable Philip J. Pierre would send him or her packing. But that just goes to show the level and the mindset of members opposite. And Mr. President, by the senator's own admission, she did speak of persons who have said that there are bad apples in her own party. She just admitted to that. They just admitted. You can never hear a member from this side said. Say anything.
Senator.
Mr. President, I stand on a point of order. I think 36, the senator is misleading the House. This is not what I said.
What did you say?
I was not referring to any specific bunch. Okay? This is the perception that many have of politicians in general. I was not referring to my specific bunch. So please be guided by what you say and repeat what I said and not what I didn't say.
Don't spin what she said. You are done.
Senator, you may continue.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you, because the records have it that is exactly what you did say. But Mr. President, it is that same attitude that is discouraging for young persons or for people to even have an ounce or a glimmer of faith in persons who are involved in the highest decision-making body of this country. As the youngest member of parliament in the upper house, I believe it is my right to speak from the perspective of a young person. When you would have gone on the ground, Mr. President, leading up to the election, you know what the young people will tell you? You might be different, but all of them is the same. That is the attitude. That is the mindset, and that is the mentality of the people that we are trying to do better for, the young people. So if there is some legislation coming before the House to be able to say we are putting an end to this, I expect, Mr. President, that unanimously, with absolutely no shadow of a doubt, we would get the support from every single member of this upper house. But if there's backlash or if there's disagreement, why should you disagree with something that is going to change the lives of people in this country? Mr. President, when I said I was going to get involved in political activities, people said, "You think you can change the world, my girl?" Because you come in with an attitude, you come in with a mentality to want to do something different, Mr. President. And the people out there have absolutely no faith. Mr. President, I can tell you, I have faith. And I am proud to be part of this Philip J. Pierre administration that is delivering on a promise that says no to the mismanagement of funds and using political office for undue advantage and corruption. And Mr. President, why is this necessary? We need to restore hope and confidence in our population. We need to restore hope and confidence to the people that we are speaking to, the people who are at home listening. Mr. President, we are not all the same. And I see them trying to look for pity from public servants, the same 43%ers, the same ones they have absolutely no confidence or faith in to do their work, that they have to spend $18 million to consultants. They have to spend $15 million, correct me if I'm wrong, about that to prepare our own budgets. But don't come here and play this hypocrisy, Mr. President, that you care and you want to look for sympathy from the public. The St. Lucian public is fed up, and that is why we had to make this campaign promise. We had to tell them that we will do something about it, and that is what we are doing here. Mr. President, you think this vaccine story will disappear overnight? It will not disappear overnight, because I want to know, when are we going to get the rest of our $7.2 million, Mr. President? The people of St. Lucia want to know. You mean to tell me the former Prime Minister can go to the media and say, Mr. President?
Mr. President, I'd like to stand on a point of order, 37, that whatever the senator is speaking to at the moment is irrelevant to the bill, talking about vaccine and when we are going to get our money back. This is irrelevant. The senator needs to confine her submission to the bill.
Excuse me, sir.
Thank you.
Senator, I beg to disagree on this point. The assertions made by Senator Jawa here was in relation to spending by the former government, which some answers have not been forthcoming, and we all know that. And accordingly, there is a very strong correlation between the two. So I disagree. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I realize the senator is very excited to hear my presentation, but I will expound so you can get an understanding of what I am talking about. $7.2 million, as you rightly stated, Mr. President. We need answers. And I am talking about corruption. I am talking about using public office for undue advantage. I am talking about mismanagement and absolutely no transparency, because the former Minister of Finance, who was the Prime Minister, who is the leader of the opposition, came out and said he did not know of the company, but he knew of the person. How can you give these hard-earned taxpayers' dollars to someone to acquire vaccines who have absolutely no medical history, who has never purchased any medicinal drugs before, to be able to purchase vaccines for our people? And then 5 weeks later, form another company called Good Vibrations, it is in the record, to be able to acquire vaccines, an entertainment company? And you want to talk about corruption or mismanagement? Mr. President, we have a lot of questions. And we came here, Madi Puete after Madi Puete, $500 million average, $500 million to borrow for COVID support. And you're telling me when the St. Lucia Labour Party administration came in, a year later, we still had to come and get support for our health sector. The $18 million to health consultants, where did that money go, Mr. President? You think the people of St. Lucia do not deserve answers? We're giving beach access to our children to build restaurants with absolutely no approval. And you're telling me that is not use of your office for advantage, Mr. President? You want me to be specific? I can be specific. $2,000 a night for hotel stays. We need answers. £2,000, almost 10,000 EC dollars. You know, like it's nothing, Mr. President, because the people of St. Lucia are not working hard enough. And you think we could not have done with this money in this time and age that we are living in? When you, of course, on the other side, did admit in your press conference yesterday, I heard it, I was paying attention, that inflation is no fault of ours. And you think if we had access to that money, we would not have been able to do better for the people of St. Lucia? The 80-20 rule in shock development, we will hear more about it. Chairpersons benefiting from contracts, blatant conflict of interest. $70 million to be paid to a construction company in 1 year, 5 months before an election. Let me tell you, we have a lot of questions, and I am very excited for the special prosecutor, Mr. President. And we talked about the comfort letter a bit earlier. serious. And you know what? We need to investigate it. By the senator's own admission, if it's there, let us talk about it. Because the former member of parliament for Castries Southeast said that the letter was forged. And I think, Mr. President, this is very serious. So for me, and for everybody on this side, if there's one thing that the special prosecutor should investigate first, it should be the
Senator, we both can be standing at the same time. You rise on the point of order.
Yeah, section 37, subsection 5 of the standing orders, where it says no senator shall impute improper motives to any member of the chamber. It's one thing for the senator to allege on some very specific cases where, in this context, we're discussing a bill to ensure that we stamp out corruption. But the issues that she's mentioned, one, I'm bringing it to you.
Please.
So, by mentioning that the vaccines, for one, there's no corruption there, right?
Senator, you talked about improper motives on a member.
Yeah. No, because it was a cabinet of which I was part of.
Which member are you talking about?
Members of the previous government.
You said improper motives of a member.
Yeah.
Which member?
The member here and the member myself were both in the cabinet.
Senator, Senator.
You're mentioning that.
Senator.
Yes.
I get to speak in silence.
Sure. Go ahead.
You have the rules in your hands.
Yes.
Right. So you will allow me to speak.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. You rose on a point of order.
Yeah.
And your point of order was casting improper motives.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I asked you to point to me to whom were the improper motives directed.
So can I continue?
If you're going to point me to that.
Okay. So when the senator mentions that £2,000 was paid for a hotel, I think she's in government when she's going to make such a serious allegation. That could mean any one of us. And so what she has to do is, if she's not talking about us, then she must make it clear who in the former government is she talking about. And number two, provide the evidence, because she is specifically claiming and telling the public that she has.
Senator, I think you've lost your way.
That there was £2,000 paid for a hotel.
Senator.
Yes.
Senator, it cannot be improper because it is a fact. Continue, Mr.
It is what fact?
Thank you, Mr.
I never
President.
paid £2,000 for a hotel room.
Thanks, Mr. President. I can clarify, because it was said in the lower house by the leader of the opposition, to which he did not deny. He never stood on any point of order to say it was not true. But before the senator rose on his point of order, I was speaking of the Padua letter, Mr. President. That's what I was speaking of. Because the member at the time did admit that his signature was forged. And I am saying, if such a thing did happen, then it needs to be investigated. We all want to know, because we have questions. We're not going to ask about it if we didn't think that it needs to be answered. But that is exactly what I'm talking about, Mr. President. No transparency, no accountability from the previous administration. And that is what we are trying to prevent. The passage of the Special Prosecutor Bill will leave no stone unturned. No public official, no public officer will ever have any excuse, like Senator Reynolds say, of ignorance of the law. And that includes myself, every single one of us. So, Mr. President, you see, I know they want to try to stand and say this and that is not said, when people in the lower house have admitted, when they go publicly on the media and say this and that, and they try to fool the people of St. Lucia. But anyways, we will not continue in that direction, Mr. President. What I am saying is we have gotten to a point where things are very difficult for the people of St. Lucia. And it will be remiss of us to not bring up the sins that got us to where we are, and why it is that the St. Lucia Labour Party administration is trying to change the course to bring St. Lucia back on the right track. If this money was spent in investment for our people, we would have been further along. We would have been able to give our parents more. Thankfully, the $500 bursary program is ongoing for grade 6 students now going into Form 1. I was a beneficiary of that. I can tell you, this impacts the most vulnerable, the less fortunate among us. But if corruption continues, Mr. President, we will have no money to be able to do those things. We will have absolutely no incentives to give the fishers and the farmers. We cannot help bus drivers. We cannot help persons who were impacted by COVID. We cannot help the tourism and hospitality sector. If we continue to do this, Mr. President, and allow it, our health system will come crumbling. St. Lucia would not have progressed, and that is not the St. Lucia that I know we all want to be a part of. Most of the persons who are sitting around this table, Mr. President, have children. Some still going to school. And you tell me that the consequences of your actions will not impact them? It will. The consequences of our actions here will. And if we do not pass this special prosecutor bill, it says that we are sending a loud message that we do not care. Of course we know corruption happens. It's very rampant among us in this country, and people want to play a blind eye. But we are simply saying we can no longer allow this, Mr. President. If we need to give our children some glimmer of hope, if we need to give our young people some glimmer of hope, and stop stealing from them, because that is what it is. It is stealing their future, stealing their livelihood, stealing their opportunity at a chance to advance. And that is why, as legislators, we need to make a decision to be on the right side. It's not about yellow, it's not about green, blue, red. This is something that is affecting every single one of us. You know, when people look at you as a young woman and think you've never been involved in any sort of corruption, but think that it's a possibility, it is sad. Because you are not really being singled out. You are being blamed for the actions of previous persons, Mr. President. And for me, I see a clear distinction in why this is important. The bill is specific. The special prosecutor is needed to investigate and prosecute corruption and corrupt practices. That is different from the parliamentary commissioner. It is different from the Attorney General's office. It is very different from the Director of Public Prosecution and the Financial Intelligence Authority, who all have their specific mandates. And yes, I do acknowledge and heed the words of Independent Senator Lee that more can be done to strengthen. But of course, we understand that every single one of those departments have their mandates. And if we are going to implement a department that is going to deal with this once and for all, I am fully in support of it, Mr. President. When I came to the House of Assembly on Tuesday, right before I came upstairs, this lady, who happens to be a supporter, had some questions. She was saying, do we need to do this right now? People are hungry, and admittedly, these are questions that people are having. But when I had to explain to her that, can you imagine what we can uncover and recover from the office of the special prosecutor? It will be worth it, Mr. President. It will be worth it, because St. Lucians will finally know two things. One, where their money went to, and two, who stole it, if indeed somebody did steal it. And so, Mr. President, with these brief words, I want to give my unwavering support to this special prosecutor bill. Thank you.
Senator Stanislas.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to lend my voice to the debate this afternoon on the bill as presented by the Leader of Government Business, Special Prosecutor Bill. Mr. President, the role of government is to ensure good governance for the sustenance of the country. And we, on this side of the House, have no difficulty, Mr. President, when policies, systems, legislations are being developed to ensure good governance, Mr. President. And this is why, Mr. President, back in 2017, it was the government of the United Workers' Party that made amendment to the Crown Proceedings Act to remove the statute of limitations, Mr. President. Statute of limitations, the removal of it, so that any time a public officer or public official is found in breach of the rules, they can be brought to justice. So we have nothing to fear on this side of the Honorable House, Mr. President. And by the way, in 2017, when the United Workers' Party made this amendment, the opposition walked out of the House. Mr. President, they walked out.
I remember that.
Okay? Mr. President, the bill, the purpose of the bill, as in section 2, in the explanatory note, says that the purpose of the bill is to provide for the special prosecutor the investigation and prosecution of corrupt conduct of public officers and public officials, and for the appointment of the special prosecutor. Both of my colleagues have made it clear we have no issues with the purpose of the bill. No issues. But it is our constitutional right as members of the opposition to share our concerns with the bill. And we do have concerns with the bill. We on this side, we are in support of accountability. We're in support of transparency in government. We are in support of integrity at the highest levels of governance. But we have concerns. And members on the government side have to understand that when we have concerns, we are going to stand, we are going to rise and share those concerns, Mr. President. And this is what my colleagues have done this morning, and this is what I intend to do as I take my position to comment on this bill this afternoon, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I said, we support the bill, but is this really the purpose of the bill? Because, Mr. President, knowing the modus operandi of the St. Lucia Labour Party, especially when they're in government, is this really the intention? Is this really the purpose? To provide a special prosecutor the investigation and prosecution of corrupt conduct of public officers, public officials, and the appointment of the special prosecutor? Or is it laden with politics of the Labour Party? Is it a bill for political retribution? Is it? Mr. President? We have reasons, very good reasons, to be suspicious, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President. We have very good reasons because we know the intent of the government. We know that this is a weapon to come after the United Workers' Party. This bill is a weapon designed specifically to come after the United Workers' Party. But we have no fear, Mr. President. We have no fear. No fear, Mr. President. Mr. President, I refer you to section 3 of the bill. Authority not affected, Mr. President. And it reads, this act does not affect the authority of a Director of Public Prosecutions under section 73 of the Constitution up to E, Mr. President. Mr. President, I beg to differ. I beg to differ with the authority not affected, which is part of this bill. And permit me, Mr. President, for you to go through Section 73 of the Constitution, Mr. President. Mr. President, I strongly believe that this bill seeks to usurp the powers of the Director of Public Prosecution, which is well enshrined in Section 73 of the Constitution. And this section, Mr. President, of the Constitution clearly outlines that the conduct of prosecutions lies solely within the remit of the holder of the office of DPP. That is Section 73, subsection 2, Mr. President. And for you again, Mr. President, permit me to continue with Section 73. Control of public prosecutions. 1. There shall be a Director of Public Prosecutions whose office shall be a public office. 2. The Director of Public Prosecutions shall have power in any case in which he or she considers it desirable so to do. 1A. To institute and undertake criminal proceedings against any person before any court of law, other than a court-martial, in respect of any offense alleged to have been committed by that person. 2. To take over and continue any such criminal proceedings that have been instituted or undertaken by any other person or authority. To take over any. Okay? 3C. To discontinue at any stage before judgment is delivered any such criminal proceedings instituted or undertaken by himself or herself or any other person or authority. I'm going through Section 73 in detail, Mr. President, for you. The powers of the Director of Public Prosecutions under subsection 2 may be exercised by him or her in person or through other persons acting under and in accordance with his or her general or special instructions. Very, very clear. Very, very clear, Mr. President. The powers conferred on the Director of Public Prosecutions by subsections 2B and 2C shall be vested in him or her to the exclusion of any other person or authority. To any other person or authority. Provided that where any other person or authority has instituted criminal proceedings, nothing in this subsection shall prevent the withdrawal of those proceedings by or at the instance of that person or authority and with the leave of the court. Continue to section 5 of 73. Subsection, sorry. For the purposes of this section, any appeal from a judgment in criminal proceedings before any court or any case stated a question of law reserved for the purpose of any such proceedings to any other court, including Her Majesty in Council, shall be deemed to be part of those proceedings. Continue. Provided that the power conferred on the Director of Public Prosecutions by subsection 2C shall not be exercised in relation to any appeal by a person convicted in any criminal proceedings or to any case stated a question of law reserved at the instance of such a person. And subsection 6 of section 73, Mr. President, in the exercise of the powers vested in him or her by subsection 2 and section 46, the Director of Public Prosecutions shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority. However, Mr. President, the members opposite have created a creature called the Special Prosecutor. the special prosecutor who now purports to have the following powers as expressed in section 8.1 of the bill today, Mr. President. Section 8.1 states, subject to the powers of the Director of Public Prosecutions under Section 73 of the Constitution of St. Lucia, Cap 101, the special prosecutor may perform any function in relation to the institution, carrying on and withdrawal of a prosecution for an offense against the laws of St. Lucia, and may prosecute a matter in his or her own name. Mr. President, I'm not a legal luminary like you or Senator Lee, but a simple review, Mr. President,
That's right.
simple review will reveal that the special prosecutor would have subsumed the powers which only the DPP can have. Simple review will show you that. Mr. President, this is unconstitutional and quite simply bad law. I'm going to go further, Mr. President. The Constitution goes further to state, Mr. President, and understand where I'm going and where I'm coming from, where I'm going, Mr. President. The Constitution goes further to state that its provisions will prevail where any law conflicts with it. This is shown clearly in section 120 of the Constitution of St. Lucia, which is short titled in the Constitution, the Supreme Law. Section 120. And 120 states, Mr. President, this Constitution is the supreme law of St. Lucia and subject to the provisions of section 41. If any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution shall prevail, and the other law shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. The supreme law. So how can you have a special prosecutor with all of this authority running simultaneously with the Director of Public Prosecution, who in the Constitution of this country is the supreme authority to investigate, to prosecute wrongdoings? And that is where I'm going, Mr. President. The constitutionality of this special prosecutor vis-a-vis the Constitution, which gives the special prosecutor the sole authority to prosecute. Mr. President, that is where I'm going. We have no problems in supporting good governance, transparency, accountability, and making people pay the consequences. But follow the rule of law. This could lead to problems, Mr. President. And we on this side, we are saying, Mr. President, we understand, like many other senators they have articulated, that office of the DPP is overloaded with cases. But $1 million has been allocated to this office of special prosecutor. Couldn't we use that money to beef up the office of DPP? Couldn't we have the additional staff and everybody else which is mentioned in the bill in the office of the DPP, have a special prosecutor in the office of the DPP and the staff, a complement of staff, to deal with all what we want to achieve in this legislation, Mr. President? That is a concern. That is the concern. couldn't we do that, Mr. President? We have additional legislation, the Integrity in Public Life Act, which speaks of corruption of public officers and public officials. Section 41 of it. And it talks about all the penalties and so on, the fines and so on, similar to what is in this bill today. Those institutions, agencies could be strengthened. They could be strengthened and achieve the same results. We are not against investigating, prosecuting corruption, but we're saying we have existing legislation, existing agencies where resources can be tailored to beef up those institutes, those agencies to carry out the same functions. Mr. President, you know, and we hear people say, oh, Jamaica did it, Barbados, this other country did it. Come on.
What are their constitutions like? How is it different from ours?
Exactly. Are we going to be followers of what Jamaica is doing, what Barbados is doing? Can we be innovative? Can we be more creative on our own and use the limited resources we have to strengthen existing agencies to achieve the same objectives, Mr. President? That is our point of contention. But we're not against the intention of the bill. Although we know the intention of the bill, there's more behind it. There's the politics behind it. We know that. We know that. But we're not against it. We're just saying that this bill is running simultaneously with the office of the DPP, which has the sole authority in the Constitution to investigate, to prosecute, etc., of matters of corruption, Mr. President. And we believe that the resources could have gone to strengthen the office of DPP with the same special prosecutor in that office with the staff complement to achieve the same. Another concern we have, and I think Senator Lee alluded to it in his presentation. I do not want to repeat, but I think it is very important that we share the sentiments. Appointment of attorneys at law, section 16, Mr. President, where it says that the Judicial and Legal Services Commission may, after consultation with the Attorney General, appoint an attorney at law to work with the special prosecutor. We believe that there must be independence. Once the special prosecutor has been appointed, allow him to vet, choose his employees, his lawyers, whomever's investigators to work with him. Once the Attorney General gets involved at that point, then there is going to be questions about impartiality and independence of the office of the special prosecutor. We believe strongly in that, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to assure the government that they have the support of the opposition, because we took the lead when we amended the Crown Proceedings Act to remove statute of limitations. But our concern is about the true intent and whether the resources couldn't be placed to beef up, to strengthen the office of the DPP to achieve the same objective which we are trying to with this bill. With these words, Mr. President, I thank you.
Great job.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, this morning when we arrived and started the debate, I even thought that we would have had the opportunity to go through before we even broke for lunch. But I think the ensuing contributions have clearly demonstrated that there was great interest in this bill, and that every member of this chamber who spoke in some way or another demonstrated why this bill was so important. Even when there was critique and a bit of drama, what is clear to me at this point is that everyone seems to be very interested in this bill. The issue is there may be different reasons for some of the interest. So before I do my brief rebuttal, I want to thank every member for their contribution, and in some cases there was some elucidation and so some suggestions made, and I welcome them. I thank the members for their deliberations, and I believe that the intention is to ensure that the legislation is strong and serve its purpose. Mr. President, let me begin by, with regard to specific responses, reiterate a point that was made in this chamber. When the debate started, I got the impression that the opposition was challenging the government's intention to fulfill a campaign promise. I didn't respond because I was waiting to hear how the debate turned out. But I think by the time Senator Jawahir spoke, towards the end, there was consensus that, in fact, no one had tried to deny that. In fact, when any government or political party offers itself to the electorate and have offered, whether it is a manifesto or campaign slate, they do so by making or offering the electorate what it is that they want to present. And the electorate elects you based on these promises. And they expect you to fulfill that. So if your promise or your plans included a special prosecutor, it stands to reason that there is an expectation from the electorate that you deliver. And so we are not, like many other promises we made to the electorate. They elected us for that purpose. And there's nothing wrong if St. Lucians are saying, deliver that promise to us. That is why this government is in office. And that is why, after 1 year, we have taken our time. And there are reasons why, and Mr. President, when this bill has been passed and the actions of the special prosecutor begin, it is then that we will really know what this thing is going to do, because it is very clear that the electorate voted this government in and gave it a mandate, and we will fulfill the mandate that the people have given us. So, Mr. President, let us not spray any gray area over the issue of whether this is one of our campaign promises. I think the answer has been very clear. Mr. President, to the leader of opposition business, his usual approach this morning, attempting to find, the weaknesses in the bill, which is his right, but in ways that I may have had to stand a couple times to deal with. He made a reference to us trying to find a way, to go after persons. Mr. President, there is no need to try to find any way to do anything. The special prosecutor bill explains the way to do things, and the way to do things will take a certain process. Mr. President, we will not engage in quickly going to get police officers to go to anybody's house to collect materials and do those kinds of things, and cannot account to the people for what the political electorate then did. We will not engage in that kind of behavior. We believe that it is proper to go through a process, enact legislation, and put something in place to deal with corruption. That is the approach we are going to take. So that model that I think he was trying to propose, we'd like to say no thank you to that. Mr. President, for some reason today I have sensed a certain level of anxiety and nerve among the opposition members here. And I don't want to assume I know why. But I sat there and saw the leader of government business attempting to defend something that we know is, if there's such a word, indefensible, or it cannot be defended, stood on his feet on a point of order to attempt to defend a fact, something that his leader sat and acceded to, but then he'll come to the upper house to attempt to defend. And that is why we need to have a special prosecutor bill, because it seems that things that are glaringly obvious and true, there are politicians who attempt to make it seem as if it is not. So, Mr. President, enough said on that. Just to use the local Creole palace, he's some Adam Mam Kaisa la Jodia. He's some parole bon matin about special prosecutor. He's some parole sa commission some jouen mettre. He's some konuka di yon de bagay tobe en jardin certain moun et puis yo vle sekli. Monsieur President, he's some, as they say, I'll go back to the English, it looks like the cap has fitted the head of some people. And so I now understand all the anxiety and the excitement. There was a certain type of excitement on this side of the house that caused us to feel that there is optimism, and to some extent when the independent senator spoke, that there is some optimism in this country that this government is serious about rooting out corruption. But the excitement that came from this side of the house, it indeed was excitement, but I think it was a type of nervous excitement, a type of anxiety and apprehension. And if there is, as I just said, if there is nothing to be afraid of, what's all the excitement about? Why are you so worried about karma and who is going to be worried? What is that? Just if there is nothing to be worried about, let the bill pass and let the special prosecutor do his work or her work. And if nobody did anything wrong, then nobody will find themselves in any problems. As a teacher, Mr. President, sometimes when I wanted to catch the culprit in my class, you know, all experience, we have teachers here. You would just make a statement and watch and observe the reaction of the students, and you can almost know who did it. Just throw the thing there and just wait. And sometimes the one who jumps first and speaks loudest gives you a hint. What's? Oh, not me, sir. I didn't say it was you. I never said it was you. So not me. Also, I know who. So it's almost as if we're operating at that level where the first guilty party starts to speak first. This side, on this side of the house, this morning when I stood, Mr. President, I never accused anybody. Never. Throughout my entire explanation of the bill. But the leader of opposition stood up and tried to tell me that I accused him. He made himself the subject of a discussion that I had nothing to say about. So is that an example of not me also? So it's not me, it's this person? So I think, Mr. President, I am beginning to understand the reason why some of the colleagues in this Honorable Senate are so very nervous. Mr. President, why is it that we have an issue with a government trying to legislate against corruption, when it is very clear that it is the mandate and the duty of the government to ensure that it's, as we call it earlier on, there is a term used, I think it's the PCI, the Perceived Corruption Index, in this country has deteriorated, particularly in the recent past. The figures are there, from 71% on a continuum of 0 to 100, where 0 is the worst case and 100 is the best case. From 71, which is more than 2/3, to 56%. That is a clear and obvious reason to be concerned. So even if nobody had been caught doing anything, on the international stage, there is a clear perception that something is going wrong in this country, because our ratings in the corruption environment or in the world that looks at corruption is going downwards. And any government who is responsible, who wants its investors to keep coming, who wants the integrity of its country to remain intact, must take a step and do something about this. So I don't understand why this is making some people so uncomfortable. Mr. President, there was an argument, and sometimes when the members come here, they come with their written script, and no matter what happens, they're not going to deviate from the script. And there are certain terms that they must use. They must say it even if it's out of context. So I expected to hear the words, and it happened here, Mr. President. You know, you had to hear the utterance of Robert Linguist. You had to hear the utterance of the minister's account, and the name of the former Prime Minister, who is now, well, belatedly saw the light and left them stranded, strengthening our government. You had to hear his name, as if his government then was not a government of the United Workers' Party. As if at the time that that particular member was Prime Minister, that he was not Prime Minister of a government that was a UWP government. So when the members come to this Honorable Senate and they just throw the words out, throw them out, just say linguist, just say minister's account, just say the name of the former Prime Minister, as if it's going to have some effect. It has no connection to what's going on. And we know those tactics. The same way they would say Rochamel, just say Rochamel and say Grindberg. You know, just say it. And St. Lucians got upset. This is not working anymore. Haven't they realized that since 2016? It's not working anymore. Our country, people are beginning to be a lot more savvy, and they can read through those things. Mr. President, I want to make some comments in response to some of the observations made by Senator Lee. Senator Lee started by thanking the government and acknowledging the need for us to have this legislation, and not only this piece, but legislation that is allowed to ventilate in the public domain and not coming to this Honorable House and Senate to have all three stages gone through. And I think this is true, and our government has deliberately tried to allow bills and other pieces of legislation to have to go through and be to get a certain level of scrutiny along in the public domain, and to be looked at by various organizations that have an interest in the bills. And so we intend to continue that very practice. So I thank him for that observation, and I assure him that our government will try its very best, unless there are extenuating circumstances and urgent matters, to do the same with other bills. In fact, it has given an opportunity for the Chamber of Commerce, the legal fraternity, and other very important scrutineers to add their voice and their suggestions to strengthen the bill, and we welcome that. Mr. President, there was an issue that the leader of opposition business raised, but I think Senator Lee dealt with it, and that was the question of why the bill refers to public officers. I don't know why the leader of government business thinks that he can be a champion of the public servants. I don't know. I don't know what moral authority he certainly has. When he sat in a cabinet with people who verbally abuse public servants in public, just said things about them, called them names, and now he wants to champion the cause of public servants as if this bill is in some way going to hurt public servants. Do you really believe that the public servants in this country do not understand the implications of this bill, and that they really think that this government is going after them in any way? The majority of the public servants in this country, Mr. President, are law-abiding, ethical, good-standing citizens. They do their job. They do it well. I must say that St. Lucia is a place where almost all of our public servants do a great job. But we must not forget and not underestimate the fact that it only takes one or two to really spoil the whole show. And that is why you have to ensure that there is legislation. But I don't think that the leader of government business can convince any public servant that he can come and champion their cause. Today, there's enough reason why public servants will not see him as a champion of their cause. Let somebody else try to play that role, but not that particular member of the opposite side. Mr. President, I spoke about the index and how it has been interpreted. But there was mention by Senator Lee of the various other agencies that need to be strengthened, and he did mention the Integrity Commission. And I want to agree that when I first became a parliamentarian, first of all, I did say that there was no integrity commission. There was none. I had my documents, I filed, and I went, and there was nobody to give it to. Nobody. They told me it was in some Uranora house somewhere at VG. When I went there, there was no one. I had to go back home with it. But then, I can tell you that I have been able, subsequently, to not only have somewhere to submit it, albeit that we can improve the conditions and the staffing, but now I have somewhere I can submit it, and I was able to be issued with a certificate that says that I am in order, my business is in order. So at least we are improving, and I welcome the idea that we need to strengthen this. I have no problems with that. I wonder why, Mr. President, that the champion, the wannabe champion of the public servants now didn't see it fit to instruct or to advise his government to ensure that there is a public service and integrity commission. You had a cabinet of ministers that was supposed to file. Who were they filing to? You were not uncomfortable that there was no public service commission? And today you want to champion the cause. Well, let's move on, Mr. President. The issue of the DPP, I want to take it in two chunks. One, I want to reassure this opposition that there is no way that this legislation is going to usurp the authority of the DPP, and I'll get back to that. But in response to Senator Lee, who made a very valid point about the backlog of cases that are currently before the DPP, I think anything that can help to relieve the DPP from some of that work should be a good thing for the DPP's office. So if the public prosecutor is going to take away some of that would have been DPP work, so to speak, I think it is going to be in the interest of the justice system to relieve to relieve the burden on the office of the DPP. And there's one other thing I think Senator Lee said that I think is true for any piece of legislation. He did mention the need for education. And that is a very important observation. You see, whenever there is legislation, especially new legislation, sometimes those of us inside here, we understand why we want to do what we want to do. But the average person out there who is not a legal person or does not understand the business or whatever area that the legislation speaks to may really not know exactly what the intention is. And I'll give you an example, Mr. President. There are some public servants and senior people, that is, and persons within the public service and even public officials who may not even recognize that some of what they do or they have done is actually an example of conflict of interest. And I'm speaking about genuine people who did not mean to do anything unscrupulous or wrong. They may not even be aware that certain actions that they have taken or decisions that they have made would constitute a breach in public trust or would be considered a conflict of interest. I remember in the teaching service when the Ministry of Education took a position where they would discourage spouses from working at the same school. So if you're a school principal, they would tell you that you should not recommend your wife to come to work at the same school. And I remember the response to that by teachers. I was a teacher then. I think I might have still been a teacher. I don't think I was a principal yet. I was a teacher. And people were resisting, but why can't my spouse work together with me? Because there was a time that it was okay. But when that move was made, there had to be education because there was an understanding that that couple, quote unquote, working in the same environment can lead to issues of conflict of interest and, can mix up things a little bit. And that was the thinking. So there are times when a public servant may not even realize, for example, that accepting a gift from a corporate business person may be ill-advised. They're not declaring it. You go, you take a trip, and you meet, a very, somebody who means well, not trying to bribe you or anything, and because of the value of the gift, you have to declare it, and you may have actually broken the law. So it is important that along with this legislation, I agree that there needs to be education so everybody understands what it is that constitutes corruption and conflict of interest. Although the relevant section of the bill that I referred to earlier in some ways tries to explain and define what is corruption, but I think that observation makes sense, and education should be continuous in helping people understand what exactly can be constituted as corruption. Mr. President, a very popular discussion point this morning was the issue of whether what the Prime Minister, what all of us have said about our Prime Minister's position on corruption. And this thing about whether the Prime Minister, when the Prime Minister says that he doesn't want anyone, or he will not tolerate anybody in his cabinet being corrupt, that should be interpreted as a lack of trust. Mr. President, I wish the former Prime Minister had uttered that at least once in his entire tenure, whether it be public or privately. At least you would have known he said it. So maybe it's new to the opposition. They don't hear those things from their leader. But I'm very happy to see that every time our Prime Minister reminds us of that we benefit because we realize that it is something that he's serious about. And we will defend it. And we appreciate it as a man who cares about his cabinet members. And he cares about people. And he keeps them on the straight and narrow. Mr. President, the statement that all of you are the same statement, I think many of us mentioned that. I want to say, Mr. President, this is a perception that is very, very real. You see, sometimes there's what is real and what is perceived. I almost want to say that this is a real perception. I don't know if there's such a thing. Because there are many people out there who have that perception that once you enter the political arena, you are corrupt. I've been told that, Gibo, you know, they call me by that nickname. Gibo, Gassa, a guy like you, die for you. That will corrupt you. They are worried that because you have become a politician, that some way, somehow, you'll become contaminated. And this is a very dangerous perception in the minds of the public. We have to change this. We must do that. If we do not do that, Mr. President, who are the people that the political arena will attract? We want the political arena to attract honorable, reputable men and women of integrity. That is what we want. But if people believe that all of us should be painted with the same brush, then those of us who try to do the things that we are supposed to do, we are called names. I can't even tell you some of the names they'll call us. So, Mr. President, whatever the notion that, you know, we should accept this, we should change this. And this piece of legislation seeks to do that. It seeks to tell us that if people are corrupt, they do not belong in politics. That's what it's saying. And if they find that you are corrupt, whether you come from the government side or the opposition side, or you are past, a present, or a future politician, we are not going to tolerate it. That is what this bill is doing. And so, I don't know if the leader of government business understands past, present, and future, because I hear him saying it's too late. You can't be too late for the future, really. Mr. President, let me wrap up. Senator Jawa here made a point that I want to just add a few words to. And she said something during her presentation. I don't know if she recognized how powerful that was, but I want to put some emphasis on it. And she said that she believes this is the value, one of the values of this bill is that it will help us to uncover and to recover. And I thought that was very powerful. This piece of legislation will help us to uncover and recover. Now, I want to commend her for making that point, because for those of us who think that this is all about going after people and so on, can you imagine, Mr. President, if this bill were to allow us to uncover where some of our assets and monies of the state are, and that we can recover these monies, how much better off we will be as a country, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, just by way of example, and I remember when that example was mentioned, the leader of government business jumped out of his seat to stand on a point of order. As soon as the member mentioned The vaccines, he jumped up. Well, out of the $7.2 million, if this piece of legislation is going to allow us to uncover the balance of that money, and then hopefully recover whatever is left, it's something about over $5 million. Can you imagine what $5 million can do for us now? That is why this piece of legislation needs to be passed. Because if we can uncover and recover what corruption has cost us in this country, at least for the last 5 years, Mr. President, I think our next budget will probably have access to about $100 million or more dollars. Easily. So, Mr. President, I really do hope that this piece of legislation helps us in that regard. And this thing about a weapon, this thing is I think Senator Stanislaus, I come to him now. Senator Stanislaus, I think he started really well. And I must thank him for playing the role of a QC. He gave me a really top lecture. I don't know if he was from the University of Birmingham, if the students inspired him this morning, but he gave me a top lecture in constitutional, on section 73 of the Constitution. And I sat there and I just listened and I'm a good student, I listened. And I said, wow, I should now refer to him as QC, Counsel QC, because he really did a number on that section 73. But Mr. President, you know what? While he was reading, I picked up my own copy of the Constitution, and I'm sure he saw me. And I followed page by page and section by section. After all that he said then he was really trying to make the point about this piece of legislation usurping the authority of the DPP. Mr. President, everything that he read is properly addressed in section 8 of this bill. So when he was finished, I just picked up the bill again and I went back to section 8 on the powers of the special prosecutor. So let me just tell him that I was very happy at his attempts to play lawyer today, avocati papi. But I was not impressed, because after he did all of that, here is what it says in section 8. Section 8:1, and may I quote, Mr. President, subject to the powers of the Director of Public Prosecutions under section 73 of the Constitution of St. Lucia, Cap 101, the special prosecutor may perform any function in relation to the institution, carry on and withdrawal of a prosecution for an offense against the laws of St. Lucia, and may prosecute a matter in his or her own name. Mr. President, you know what part of that statement takes care of everything that the senator spent about 15 minutes reading from this Constitution? The first 3, 6, 7, 9, 10, the first 10 words in this section. And let me just read them, Mr. President. 8:1, subject to the powers of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Before anything else is done, it says subject to the... Now, I ain't going to play no lawyer now. I'm just playing a layman's account of what I see in front of me. So I'm not going to go and try to give any lecture on law. I think Senator Lee is better placed to do that. And he didn't try to do that. So all I see here is all of this lecture basically is addressed in the first 10 words in section 8:1, subject to the powers of the Director of Public Prosecution. That already tells you where you're going. Nothing has started without the DPP. But then the lecture came, and so I must commend him for his effort. Maybe he should try law school as his next ambitious step. I like his spirit though, Mr. President. I like his spirit. So, Mr. President, one more thing. 2 days ago, and that shows you, if you listen to the discussion this morning, there are 5 senators sitting here, and I think if you listen to each of our presentations, we may not have said the same things, but I think we're speaking the same language. But then, you see, when and there's no script, we speak the same language without a script. But even when some people come with a script, they still are in contrast with what their leaders say. So let me give you the example, Mr. President. 2 days ago, the leader of opposition business, his leader, was attempting to give the lower house a lecture on why they should follow the model, and Jamaica is this and this is a good way to go and so on. All thing about Jamaica. But then he comes here a while ago and says that, not him, sorry, but his colleague, on his behalf, I suppose, Senator Stanislas, is saying that we should be creative and we should not follow what other jurisdictions do. And then when Senator Stanislas made that point, the leader of opposition business was, so Mr. President, I don't know what the position of the opposition is. What's their position on this? One thing I think they said that they support the bill. But then, here is, the opposition in the Senate saying the direct opposite of what the leader in the other chamber says. So, it's not for me to worry about. One thing I'll say to you, Mr. President, this government is very clear about its position on corruption. We are going to make every effort to stamp it out in this country, whether it is from this side, or any side. And we are not worried about who is going to get caca glue or who is going to point at who did what. This is not the point. This bill, the Special Prosecutor Bill, is here at this table today to be laid and to be passed to ensure that we address the matter of corruption in this country. And we will do so. And by the grace of God, after this bill is passed, the chips shall fall where they may. Mr. President, I look forward to the passage of this bill to be enacted as law, and to the actions and decisions that will be made thereafter. And I really do believe that it will make this country a better place. It will give us a better chance. It will make us less corrupt. It will keep us in check. And it will change the landscape, particularly the political and economic landscape of this country, for a long time to come. And so I give it my full blessings and look forward to its concurrence. I thank you, Mr. President.
Senators, the question is that a special prosecutor bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to provide for the special prosecutor the investigation and prosecution of corrupt conduct of public officers and public officials, and for the appointment of the special prosecutor and for related matters.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Authority not affected.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Part 1, clauses 4 to 23.
Office of Special Prosecutor.
Part 1, clauses 4 to
23.
Did you all say aye? Aye. Part 1, clauses 4 to 23 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Part 2.
Prevention.
Part 2, clauses 24 to 29.
Prevention of corrupt conduct.
Part 2, clauses 24 to 29 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Part 3, clauses 30 to 31.
Miscellaneous.
Part 3, clauses 30 to 31 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Schedule.
Section 2.
Schedule stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Aye. Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the Special Prosecutor Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Special Prosecutor Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Special Prosecutor Act 2022.
Leader of Government Business.
Mr. President, I move that this Senate do stand adjourned. Sign it out.
Senators, the question is that this House stands adjourned. Sign a die. And now put the question. As many as are of opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
All right.
This sitting is adjourned.
Well, there you have it. The Senate has just passed the Special Prosecutor Bill and soon to become law after the accent by the Acting Governor General. So the bill now will take effect as soon as the Governor General, Acting Governor General has signed it. This bill evoked quite a bit of debate from both chambers, from the lower house and the upper house, but the focus today is on the upper house. Today we saw, of course, the presentation by the leader of government business, Senator Gabriel Ferdinand, who mentioned all the benefits of the bill, and of course he also talked about the bill ensuring good governance in this country. Following the leader of government business, there was also the reply or the contribution by the Senator Fede, who indicated, well, was very much on his feet, I must say, who was quite a bit, elated and discussed the bill and of course, giving support. All of the members on the opposition side as well as government side gave support to the bill. That was very, very interesting. So we had a very spirited debate, particularly on the government side, much spirited discussion from Senator Kadian Shalri, who spoke a lot about her personal experiences. Then we also had on the government side Senator Therapoulius as well as finally on the government side we had Senator Harold Stanislas making his contribution to the bill, and on the independent side we had the Senator Dale Lee, who made very, very interesting observations about the bill. In particular, he mentioned or stressed the independence of the appointment of the of the special prosecutor and the need for education. The only senator who did not speak today was the independent senator, forgetting his name now, but one independent senator who did not make a contribution. Generally, it was very spirited debate, very interesting, and so, like I said earlier, they seem to have come to the end, and like it's just a waiting passage and accent by the Governor General of St. Lucia. Témoin dit ça incroyable vitement. Aujourd'hui, nous loi 9 là, ça c'est loi pour appointer un avocat et bien un monde pour qu'il fait investigation en affaires corruption en gouvernement. Avec l'aide du gouvernement, c'est pas seulement un politicien, mais c'est généralement monde qui a des propositions en dedans en gouvernement aussi. Il faut regarder qui ça loi ça la cabaye un monde pouvoir pour faire investigation avec la niacha parole à son indépendance en monde ça la manière monde ça la qui supposé indépendant avec qui pas pour conduire par pièce d'affaires politiciens avec Sordia nous toutes ces mêmes sénat là parler à ceux qui façade gouvernement avec façade opposition il tout parler anti un seul ça c'est un seul façade ça c'est un militant qui est indépendant il pas parler il est bien intéressant là je suis bien content enfin il y a tout montré qui est bien content pour ça qui passait là aujourd'hui et bien c'est comme ça nous avons fini ça qui passait en caille concite avec nous bien content pour nous te présenter Baou avec nous sommes bien content pour ça continuer rester garder NTN avec et puis ça nous avons bon après-midi bon soir avec nous garder vidéo en dans studio NTN.